Hyun-soo walked into classroom 7 with his notebook tucked under his arm. The morning light came through the tall glass windows of the Universal Academy, showing the strange landscape outside. Trees with purple leaves grew next to rocks that looked like glass. The sky was not blue like Earth's sky, but a soft green color that made everything feel peaceful and calm. The classroom was already half full of students. They were not human. A tall blue alien with 4 arms sat near the front, writing something with all 4 hands at the same time. Next to him, a small creature that looked like it was made of liquid metal moved slowly across her seat, leaving a trail of silver marks. Hyun-soo was used to this now. He had been at the Universal Academy for 3 months, and he had learned that humans were the only ones who looked like humans. Hyun-soo found his seat between 2 familiar faces. On his left was Kara, a Valorian with purple skin and large eyes that never stopped thinking. She was brilliant in every class, always the first to answer questions. Always correct. On his right sat Tash, a Zorvathian with orange skin and kind eyes. Tash was not as quick as Kara, but he was smart in a different way. He understood things that took Kara longer to see. "Hello, Hyun-soo," Kara said without looking up from her notes. "Did you study the material from yesterday? Professor Meln will probably ask about thermal retention calculations today." Hyun-soo smiled. Kara was always thinking about what would happen next. "I looked at it a little," he said, "but I think I will understand it better when I see it in the class." Tash turned to him with a curious expression. "How can you understand something you have not studied?" he asked. This was not a rude question. Tash really wanted to know how Hyun-soo's mind worked. "My grandfather used to say that you learn better by doing things than by reading about them," Hyun-soo said. "On Earth, we had a lot of old buildings. He showed me how to fix them. You touch the stone, you see how it breaks, you feel how heavy it is. Then you understand how to make it work." Kara looked at him for the first time. Her large eyes showed something that might have been confusion. But that is not efficient. If you read the physics first, you understand the principles. Then you can fix anything, even things you have never touched before. Before Hyun-soo could answer, Professor Meln entered the room. The old Katorian walked slowly, his long body moving like a plant bending in the wind. He was very old, older than any other teacher at the academy. His skin was gray and covered with lines that looked like maps of ancient countries. He had been teaching for so long that even other aliens respected him. "Good morning, students," Professor Meln said. His voice was like wind through a canyon. "Today I am going to give you something interesting. Something that will test not just your knowledge, but also who you are." He moved to the front of the classroom and opened his hands. A picture appeared in the air, made of light. It showed a piece of empty land. There were scattered trees, some stones, and soil. It looked empty and useless. "This is Zone 42, Professor Meln said. "You will have 1 week to design a shelter for this location. You can use anything you find in this zone. You cannot bring things from outside. You will have a team of 4 students. You will present your design to the class, and I will judge you based on how well you understand your environment and how efficient your solution is." The classroom became quiet. Students started whispering to each other, probably thinking about what they would do. "This is a simple assignment," Professor Meln continued. "Other classes have done this before. Usually the top students get marks for perfect designs. Perfect on paper, perfect in theory." He paused and looked directly at Hyun-soo. "But let me tell you something. The universe does not always work the way the theory says it should." Hyun-soo felt Kara and Tash looking at him. He did not know why Professor Meln was looking at him when he said this. After class ended, most students went quickly to the library to start their research. They needed to find out what materials could do, what structures would be strong, what calculations would make everything work perfectly. But Hyun-soo did something different. He asked the Academy's central computer where Zone 42 was located. Then he walked there. The zone was about 15 minutes from the Academy building. Hyun-soo walked through areas where other students were studying or practicing different things. He passed a field where a green alien was making plants grow with just his hands. He passed another area where students were learning to think together with machines. But Zone 42 was empty and quiet. When Hyun-soo got there, he stood for a long time just looking. The land was not as useless as the picture showed. The trees were strong with good thick branches. The stones were not random. They were laid out almost in patterns. The soil was deep and dark, which meant things could grow there. The ground was not flat. It went down in one direction, which meant water would flow away from whatever you built. He touched the bark of one tree. It was soft on the outside but hard underneath, like it would not break easily. He picked up a stone and felt its weight. It was exactly the kind of stone his grandfather had taught him to use for building strong things. He looked at the way the wind moved through the trees and noticed that it came from the same direction and moved in the same way. Hyun-soo saw something that Kara would not see if she just read about the zone. He saw that this land was trying to tell him what it wanted. It was telling him how it could be used. He walked back to the academy and found Minna in their room. Minna was his roommate, another human, and she was always supportive even when other students thought his ideas were strange. "I saw the assignment," Minna said. "Are you going to make a perfect design like everyone else?" "No," Hyun-soo said. "I am going to build something." "Build. But we are supposed to design and present. The assignment is about planning." "Plans are good," Hyun-soo said. "But I think I should see what happens when I really try to build something. Then the other students can see if my design actually works." Minna looked worried and happy at the same time. "Professor Meln will not like that. Nobody just builds things without a complete plan first." "Maybe," Hyun-soo said. "But I think he will want to see what happens." That night, Hyun-soo did not go to the library. He went back to Zone 42 when everyone else was sleeping. He brought a tool that every student received at the academy. It was simple, but very useful. He started to gather wood and stones. He made a plan in his head, not on paper. His grandfather had always told him that the best plans were the ones you carried in your mind, because your mind could change them as you learned new things. By the time the sun came up, Hyun-soo had made the frame of something that might become a shelter. It was rough and simple, but it was real. It was not just an idea anymore. He did not know that this small beginning would change everything. He did not know that other students would start to notice. He did not know that Professor Meln had been waiting for someone like him to arrive at the academy. All he knew was that his hands were tired, his clothes were dirty, and he was happy. The night was cool and quiet when Hyun-soo returned to Zone 42 for the second time. The purple-leaved trees cast long shadows under the green sky, and the only sound was the gentle wind that moved through the branches. He had decided not to sleep. There was too much to do, and something inside him told him to work while the world was quiet and the other students were dreaming. He started with the fireplace. This was the most important part of any shelter, his grandfather had told him long ago. A fireplace was the heart of a home. It gave warmth, it allowed you to cook, and it made people want to gather around it. Without a good fireplace, a shelter was just a box. With one, it became a home. Hyun-soo found stones of the right size near the water that ran through the zone. The water had been running there for a very long time, and it had taught him something important by how it had shaped the stones. The smoothest stones, rounded by water, were not the best for building. The stones with sharp edges and rough surfaces, broken naturally by rocks and weather, were the ones that fit together best. This was something you could not learn from reading. You had to see it and touch it. He gathered these stones carefully, thinking about how they would go together. He did not use any plan or drawing. Instead, He let his hands remember what his grandfather's hands had taught them. He began to build upward, layering the stones so that each one held the weight of the ones above it. He made the base wide and strong. He made the opening face the direction that would catch the wind and pull the smoke upward into the sky. By the time dawn started to paint the green sky a lighter color, Hyun-soo had built the bottom part of the fireplace. His arms were tired and his back hurt, but he felt something warm inside his chest that had nothing to do with physical warmth. He had made something real. It was not perfect, but it was honest. Every stone was in the right place because he had thought carefully about where it should be. As the morning light grew stronger, Hyun-soo heard footsteps. He did not hear many footsteps in Zone 42. The other students were probably at the library, reading about fireplace theory. He turned and saw Mina walking toward him, carrying a large container of water. "You have been here all night," Mina said. It was not a question. She could see it in the dirt on his face, and the way his hands were shaking a little from tiredness. "Yes," Hyun-soo said. "I could not sleep. There was too much work to do." Mina looked at the fireplace. Her eyes grew wide. "This is real," she said. "This is actually real. I thought you just meant you would prepare to build something, but you actually built it." "It is not finished," Hyun-soo said. "The hardest part is still to come. I need to make the chimney work correctly. If the smoke does not go up and out, the whole thing fails." Mina set down the water. "I brought this because I thought you might be here. I also brought some food." She pulled out some bread and fruit from her bag. "The other students do not know you are doing this." Kara was in the library all night with 3 other students, running calculations on different shelter designs. They want to present something perfect. Hyun-soo and Mina sat and ate breakfast while watching the sun rise higher into the sky. It was peaceful, and Hyun-soo felt grateful that she was here and did not think his way of doing things was wrong. Around midday, other students started to arrive at Zone 42. This was the time when the Academy allowed students to work on their assignments. First came a group of 3 Valorians, Kara's classmates from her home planet. They had a piece of equipment that made holographic pictures. They were going to project their design into the air and calculate how many resources they would need. Then came some students from other species. And then came Tash. Tash walked directly to Hyun-soo and just looked. He did not say anything for a long time. He looked at the fireplace, at the scattered stones, at the wood that was prepared nearby. "You have been building," Tash said finally. "Yes," Hyun-soo said, "without a complete plan, without calculations, without even telling anyone what you were doing." "Yes," Hyun-soo said again. Tash walked around the fireplace, examining it carefully. He put his hand on one of the stones and moved it a little, then let it settle back. "This is wrong according to the theories I have read," he said. Hyun-soo felt a small drop of disappointment. Maybe Tash would think he was foolish like other aliens did. But then Tash continued, "But it is also right in a way that the theories do not explain. Why did you put this stone here?" He pointed to a particular place in the fireplace. "Because the stone below it is weak on one side," Hyun-soo said. "So I put this stone to support it where it is weak. The weight from above will be held by the parts that are strong." "Show me how you know which parts are strong," Tash said. And so Hyun-soo spent the next few hours teaching Tash how to build. He showed him how to feel the stone, how to test it by pressing with your hands, how to listen to what the stone told you about itself. He showed him how to understand the balance between weight and support. He showed him how wood bent and broke and why you chose straight pieces for certain jobs. Tash was hungry for this knowledge in a way that other students were not. He asked questions that showed he was thinking hard about what Hyun-soo was teaching him. By the afternoon, Tash was helping to gather more stones and preparing wood for the next stages of building. More students came over to look. Kara arrived with her group, and she saw the progress immediately. Her expression showed confusion and something else that might have been concern. She looked at the holographic designs her group had created, perfect geometric structures with perfect angles and perfect measurements. Then she looked at Hyun-Soo's fireplace, which was not perfect by those standards, but which looked like it belonged to the earth it was built on. "This is interesting," Kara said. She did not say whether she thought it was good or bad. She just said it was interesting. Professor Meln appeared in the late afternoon. He walked slowly through the zone, looking at all the different projects. He saw the holographic designs. He saw the students taking measurements and running calculations. Then he came to Hyun-Soo's fireplace. The old Katorian did not say anything. He placed his long hand on the stones, feeling them the way Tash had learned to do. He looked at how the stones fit together. He stepped back and looked at the whole structure. His ancient eyes seemed to be reading something in the stones that Hyun-Soo could not see. "You did this without mathematical calculations," Professor Meln said. It was not a question. "Yes," Hyun-Soo said. "My grandfather taught me to build with my hands and my eyes and my feeling for how things work." "And what have you learned from this?" the professor asked. "I learned that each stone is different," Hyun-Soo said. "And each place is different. So you cannot use the same formula everywhere. You have to pay attention to what each situation needs." Professor Meln nodded slowly. "This is what many students do not understand. They want everything to follow perfect rules. But the universe is full of exceptions to the rules. The universe is full of individual things that must be treated as individuals." He turned to leave, then looked back at Hyun-Soo. "Continue your work," he said. "I will be interested to see what you create when you finish." As the sun set and painted the alien sky in shades of orange and pink, Hyun-Soo looked at what he had built. The fireplace stood strong and honest in the fading light. It was not beautiful in the way a mathematical equation is beautiful, but it was beautiful in a different way. It was the beauty of something that knew its purpose and did it well. The morning that changed everything started like any other morning at the Universal Academy. Hyun-Soo had slept for only a few hours, but he felt excited rather than tired. He had finished the main walls of the shelter, and today he was going to start on the chimney that would make the fireplace work correctly. But as he walked toward Zone 42, he saw something unusual. Official vehicles from the Hegemonic Council were parked near the Academy main building. These were not normal visitors. The hegemony was the government that ran the Academy and made decisions for thousands of worlds. Kara found him on the way. She looked worried. "They arrived this morning," she said. "A commander named Vex. He is from the Resource Department. He is checking how we use our materials." "Is that bad?" Hyun-Soo asked. "It could be," Kara said. "The hegemony does not like waste. If they think the Academy is wasting resources, they can take things away and make changes." By midday, Commander Vex came to Zone 42 with several assistants. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that looked like metal. His eyes were very sharp and seemed to see everything. He walked through the zone looking at all the student projects. He stopped at the holographic designs and made notes. He looked at the calculations and seemed to approve of them. But when he came to Hyun-Soo's shelter, he stopped walking. He walked around it slowly. He looked at the fireplace. He examined the wooden frame. He touched the stones and let them go. His expression showed that he did not approve of what he was seeing. "This is not a proper design," Commander Vex said to Professor Meln, who had appeared behind him. "This is just random construction. This is a waste of resources. This project should be stopped immediately." Professor Melon's face remained calm, but his ancient eyes showed something sharp and careful. "Why do you say it is waste?" he asked. "Because it is not optimized," Commander Vex said. "These materials could be used much more efficiently. The student has not even done calculations. How can he know if this will work?" "Then let me propose something," Professor Melon said. "Let us make this a proper test. The student will have until tomorrow evening to complete his shelter. If it passes the livability standards of the hegemony, your department will allow him to continue. If it fails, you may confiscate all the materials." Commander Vex turned to look at the old Katorian. His sharp eyes studied the professor's face. "You are very confident about this," he said. "I am," Professor Mellon said simply. Commander Vex was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Very well, but it must pass all standards. Not most. All." And so it began. The assignment that was supposed to take a week became a race against time. Hyun-soo had less than 24 hours to complete everything. He told Kara, Tash, and Min-ah what was happening, and something surprising occurred. Instead of leaving him to face this alone, they offered to help. Kara brought her calculations to the shelter. She had spent the night doing mathematics on Hyun-soo's design, measuring what he had already built, analyzing the physics of the fireplace and the structural support. "You are actually doing this correctly," she said, and Hyun-soo could hear real surprise in her voice. "The physics works, the geometry works, but I can suggest some improvements that will make it stronger." Together, Hyun-soo and Kara worked through the structure. Where Hyun-soo had built by feeling and experience, Kara added mathematical understanding. They reinforced certain walls. They adjusted the angle of the roof slightly based on her calculations of water drainage. The work was hard, and sometimes they disagreed about how to do things, but they found ways to blend their two approaches. Tash worked with Hyun-soo on the chimney. This was the most important part, because if the chimney did not work correctly, the fireplace would fill with smoke. Hyun-soo explained the principle. "Hot smoke rises," he said, "so the chimney should be straight and smooth so the smoke goes up easily. But we also need to make sure that cold air can come in at the bottom to feed the fire with oxygen." They built the chimney using stones that Hyun-soo selected for their smoothness. Tash helped place them, and as they worked, he asked questions that helped Hyun-soo explain why he was making each choice. The work was physical and hard, but it was also beautiful in the way that real work can be beautiful. Min-ah worked outside the shelter. She had asked Hyun-soo if she could do something different, something that showed that a shelter was not just about keeping the weather out. She took seeds from the academy garden and planted them around the shelter entrance. She prepared soil and created a small garden space. "People need more than just protection from weather," she said. "They need food. They need living things around them. They need to see that life can grow in this place." As the sun went down that first day, Hyun-soo looked at what they had accomplished. The shelter was not finished, but it was real and strong. The fireplace stood waiting. The walls were solid. The garden was beginning to grow. That night, Hyun-soo could not sleep at all. He worked through the darkness with just a small light, continuing to perfect the chimney. He tested it by dropping smoke from a small fire to see if it would go up or come back down. He adjusted stones here and there until the smoke flowed perfectly upward. He worked on making the inside of the chimney smooth, so the smoke would have nothing to catch on. As dawn broke, Tash arrived with more help. He had talked to other students, and some of them had decided to come help Hyun-soo. There was a Valorian named Ryon who wanted to see if human building could really work. There was a Zorvathian named Pell who was Tash's friend. There was even a young alien from a species called the Karosh who wanted to learn. By the middle of the second day, the shelter was nearly complete. The walls stood strong. The fireplace was finished. The chimney was perfect. And when Hyun-soo built the first real fire to test it, the smoke rose clean and straight into the sky with no leaks or problems. The garden was beginning to show first green shoots. And everywhere you looked, you could see the care that had been taken to build something that would actually work and last. At sunset, as the light was fading to purple and gold, Hyun-soo lit the fireplace again. This time, he kept the fire burning and watched as warmth spread through the shelter. The warmth was real. The light from the fire was warm and gentle, and when he stepped outside and looked at the shelter from a distance, he saw something he had not expected. It was beautiful. Not in the way that mathematical designs are beautiful, but in the way that homes are beautiful. It looked like it belonged to the land it was built on, like it had grown from the earth itself. Commander Vex and Professor Meln arrived just as the sun was setting. The commander walked slowly around the shelter. He looked at everything. He went inside. He felt the warmth from the fireplace. He tested the walls by pressing on them. He looked at the chimney. He looked at the garden. When he came back outside, his sharp metal face showed nothing, but something in his eyes had changed. "This is adequate," he said finally. "It is more than adequate. It is well designed and well built." But before anyone could celebrate, Commander Vex raised his hand. "However," he said, "there is one more test. The official hegemony inspection is tomorrow morning at full light. This shelter must pass every measurement, every calculation, every official standard. If it does not, this is over." And so they all understood that the real test was still to come. The morning of the inspection was cold and clear. The green sky was as quiet as a held breath. Hyun-soo had not slept at all. He had spent the night going over every part of the shelter, checking and rechecking everything. He had smoothed rough places on the walls. He had adjusted the fireplace one more time. He had arranged the garden so that the growing plants were easy to see and count. At first light, Commander Vex arrived with his team of inspectors. They carried equipment that measured things that Hyun-soo did not have names for. They had computers that made calculations faster than any mind could think. They had tools that tested the strength of materials. They looked serious and official and very difficult to impress. Commander Vex began the inspection by walking through the shelter with his instruments. His assistants measured the walls. They tested how well the temperature stayed stable inside by using heat sensors. They measured the space and made sure the shelter could hold the minimum amount of living space required by hegemony law. They checked the roof to see if water would leak through during rain or if it would drain properly away. Everything passed, but Commander Vex's face remained hard and unreadable. Then came the fireplace test. This was the most important part. An official inspector built a standard fire using standard fuel. Then they measured everything. How hot did the fire burn? How hot did the shelter become? How much time did it take to warm the entire space? How much smoke came into the living area versus going up the chimney? How efficiently did the fireplace turn fuel into useful heat? Hyun-soo watched every measurement with fear in his heart. But with each test, the numbers came back right. The fireplace was more efficient than the minimum requirement. The heating was even and good throughout the shelter. The smoke went straight up, with almost no smoke in the living space. Then Commander Vex looked at Hyun-soo. "I want to understand this," he said, and his sharp voice held something that sounded like real curiosity. "How did you know to build the fireplace in this specific way? The angle of the chimney, the height of the opening, the depth of the fire area. These are perfect, but I do not see how a student could calculate them correctly without advanced mathematics." Hyun-soo thought about how to explain something that came from his hands and his feeling rather than from equations. "My grandfather built buildings for many years," he said. "He taught me by letting me work with him. I learned how heat moves, how air flows, how stones balance. I learned by trying and failing and trying again. When I saw this zone and these materials, my hands and my mind already knew what to do." "You are saying you had no calculations?" Commander Vex asked. "No calculations on paper," Hyun-soo said, "but calculations in my mind and in my hands from years of learning." Commander Vex was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Show me the garden." Minna stepped forward. She showed the inspector her small garden with the growing plants. She explained that plants could provide food and also show that living things could survive in this shelter. The inspector measured the soil quality. He tested the plants to see if they were growing at the correct rate. He checked the water that Minna had arranged to collect from the roof. Everything passed the official standards. Next, they tested the structural stability of the entire shelter. They put weight on the roof. They pushed on the walls. They tried to find any weak places. Everything held strong. The builders of the shelter, both the human with practical knowledge and the alien with mathematical knowledge, had done their work well. The inspection took many hours. By midday, Commander Vex and his team had finished all their tests. They gathered their equipment. For a long time, none of them said anything. They just looked at the shelter. Then Commander Vex spoke. "This shelter meets every requirement of the hegemony standards," he said. "The temperature regulation is excellent. The structure is sound. The efficiency is high. The garden provides additional resources. This is an excellent shelter." Hyun-soo felt his heart jump, but he waited to hear if there was more. "However," Commander Vex continued, "I must tell you something. When I arrived here 2 days ago, I believed that this type of construction was wasteful and inefficient. I believe that proper design comes from mathematics and theory, not from the kind of work I was seeing here." He looked directly at Hyun-soo. "I was wrong." The commander turned to his assistants. "We will document this shelter completely. We will record all measurements and all results. We will send a full report to the Hegemonic Council." Kara had been watching the inspection from a distance, taking notes and recording the official measurements. She stepped forward now with her papers and her calculations. "I have the mathematical analysis of how this shelter works," she said. "I have proven that the practical design choices that Hyun-soo made align perfectly with the laws of physics. I have also found that there are ways to improve the design by combining my calculations with his knowledge." She showed her work to Commander Vex. The inspector looked through her papers carefully. "This is good work," he said. "You understand both the theory and the practical reality. This is unusual." "Hyun-soo taught me how to feel and think about building," Kara said. "And I showed him why his ideas work through mathematics. Together, we made something better than either of us could make alone." Commander Vex nodded slowly. "I will include this in my report to the Council," he said. "The Council needs to understand that there may be more than one path to good solutions. They need to understand that practical knowledge and theoretical knowledge can work together." As afternoon came, more students gathered around the shelter. Word had spread that the inspection was finished and that everything had passed. Some students were disappointed that their mathematical designs had not been tested. But many others were curious. They wanted to understand how Hyun-soo's approach could work so well. Professor Meln appeared as the sun was starting to set. He looked at the shelter, and something in his ancient face showed deep satisfaction. He looked at Hyun-soo and at Kara working together. He looked at Tash and the other students who had helped build. "You have done something important," Professor Meln said. "Not just for this assignment, but for something much larger. You have shown that the universe is not as simple as we sometimes think. You have shown that intelligence comes in different forms." That night, as Hyun-soo sat by the fireplace that he had built, watching the flames dance and watching the warmth spread through the shelter he had created, he felt something he had not expected to feel. He felt like he had changed something. Not just his assignment grade, but something deeper in how his alien classmates saw the world. The fire crackled and the smoke rose clean and straight into the green sky. In that simple perfection, a revolution had begun. Within 3 days, Hyun-soo's shelter became the most famous project at the Universal Academy. Students from other departments started visiting Zone 42 to see what had been built. They came to understand how a human had created something that was both practical and mathematically perfect. Some brought cameras and recorded everything. Others brought measuring devices to take their own measurements. The shelter had become a classroom, and the fireplace had become a teacher. Kara published her analysis of Hyunsu's design in the Academy's official journal. Her paper was called The Integration of Practical Knowledge and Mathematical Theory in Shelter Construction. In her writing, she explained how she had studied Hyunsu's work and found that everything he had done followed the laws of physics perfectly, even though he had not written any equations. She showed how his hands understood geometry and balance in ways that matched what the most advanced computers would calculate. The paper made Kara famous among her own people, the Valorians, but it also made something more happen. Some older Valorian scientists read her work and became angry. They sent messages to the Academy saying that Kara was giving too much credit to manual labor and not enough credit to pure theory. They said that her work was embarrassing to the Valorian tradition of intellectual achievement. One famous Valorian mathematician said that Kara had abandoned the principles of logical thinking for the crude methods of primitive species. Kara received these messages, and Hyunsu could see that they hurt her. But she did not take back what she had written. Instead, she kept working. She studied more of Hyunsu's building techniques and continued to prove mathematically why they worked so well. Tash had his own experience with resistance. When his species, the Zorvathians, heard that he had spent time learning manual building skills, some older Zorvathians questioned this. They said that his time would have been better spent in pure study. They asked him why he was wasting his education learning something that machines could do. Tash's own teacher at the academy told him that he was going in the wrong direction, that he was falling behind in his theoretical studies. But then something different happened. Younger Zorvathians started visiting Zone 42. They came to learn from Hyunsu. They wanted to understand why their traditional education, which focused only on abstract thinking and theory, had never taught them anything like what Hyunsu was showing them. They asked Tash to teach them how to build, and Tash, instead of going back to pure theory, started to teach. The Hegemonic Council received Commander Vex's report about the shelter. They read about how the practical construction had passed all official standards. They read about how mathematical analysis showed that the design was correct. And then the council made a surprising decision. They announced that they wanted to create a new program at the Academy. This program would be called Earth-Human Pragmatic Studies. The goal was to take what humans understood about practical problem-solving and combine it with the theoretical knowledge of the most advanced alien species. The council believed this could make better solutions to problems across the entire hegemony, but this announcement brought resistance from institutions across the galaxy. Old universities on ancient alien worlds said the hegemony was making a mistake. They said that practical knowledge was less valuable than pure theory. They said that accepting human methods meant accepting primitive ways of thinking. Some institutions refused to participate in the new program. Some said they would not teach their students about human methods. Hyunsu did not want to be at the center of a conflict between different ways of thinking. He just wanted to keep building and learning. But one day, Professor Meln called him to his office. The office was quiet and old and full of books made of real paper, not digital displays. Professor Melon sat behind a table and gestured for Hyunsu to sit. "I need to tell you something," Professor Melon said. "When I assigned the project to your class, I had reasons beyond teaching shelter construction." "I know," Hyunsu said. "Kara said you wanted to show that there are different ways of being intelligent." "Yes," Professor Melon said. "But I need you to understand why I did this. For thousands of years, the hegemony has relied on one type of thinking. We favor theory, mathematics, calculation. We have achieved much. We have built a civilization that stretches across many star systems. But we have also stopped seeing other types of intelligence." Professor Meln stood and walked to a window. Below, students of many different species were working together on construction projects in different zones. "Humans have something that we had forgotten," Professor Meln continued. "You have the ability to look at a problem and see it as it actually is, not as your theories say it should be. You can adapt. You can feel the difference between things. You can learn by doing rather than only by understanding. This is not less intelligent than pure mathematics. It is differently intelligent. But some people are angry, Hyun-soo said. I did not mean to make anyone angry. No, Professor Meln said, but you have made them uncomfortable, and sometimes that is necessary. Comfort makes people stay the same. Discomfort makes people think about why they believe what they believe. 3 weeks later, Mina was selected to help design the new Earth-Human Pragmatic Studies program. She worked with teachers from many different species to create a curriculum that would teach both practical and theoretical approaches. She was nervous at first, but as she worked, she realized that she was helping to change how an entire civilization thought about learning. Kara received a proposal from a group of young Valorians who wanted to work with her. They wanted to study how practical knowledge could improve mathematical theory. They said that Kara's work had shown them something their own education had missed. Kara accepted, and she started a research group that combined building, observing, and calculating in new ways. But there was also loss in this process. Some of Kara's older colleagues stopped speaking to her. Some said she was betraying the Valorian way, and Tash faced something similar. His own family was confused about why he was spending time on manual work when he could be doing pure research. Some of his relatives thought he was wasting his abilities, yet despite the resistance, the new program grew. Students from many species came to learn practical building from human teachers. They learned how to feel materials, how to observe nature, how to solve problems with their hands. At the same time, they continued to learn mathematics and theory from their alien teachers. Slowly, a new understanding began to form. Intelligence was not a single thing. It was many things working together. One morning, Hyun-soo stood at the shelter and looked at all the new students arriving in Zone 42. There were aliens of colors and shapes he had never seen before. They were here to learn what he had discovered through his grandfather's teachings. They were here to learn that the universe would teach you if you paid attention. They were here to learn that your hands could know things that your mind had never been taught. The fireplace still burned warm. The garden still grew. And around the shelter, the revolution continued. One student at a time, one lesson at a time, proving that the universe was larger and more full of possibility than anyone had believed.